Hello and welcome to another episode of Purple Tories. My name is Damien Heads, aka the Young PJW, and today we are having a special episode dedicated to the new points-based immigration system, which has just been announced, I think, on Friday. And Priti Patel, I think, did a speech about it. So we're going to go over that. We have two guests. We have Zach Bosley from a previous episode, you might remember. And we have our new guest, which is Daniel Klein.
Hello, thank you for inviting me on.
And you have a YouTube channel, Daniel, don't you, called Ad Hominem. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I'm the host, the joint host of Ad Hominem. We're pretty new. We basically just sort of doing a couple of podcasting, small episodes. But we were recently lucky enough to interview Peter Hitchens. So you can find that on YouTube. It's just Ad Hominem in capital letters. So I hope you enjoy that and hope you enjoyed today. Thanks for having me, guys.
How did you get Peter Hitchens, by the way?
Well, so I'm a university student at Oxford Brookes. So being in Oxford does provide you with those sorts of opportunities where you can go and just meet some pretty amazing people. And I literally saw him at a talk where he was talking about Syria and Iraq. He's quite anti-war for a conservative. And I just approached him afterwards and said, "Can I buy you a drink?" And he said yes. So I went and had a chat and I convinced him to go on. And at which point I didn't even have any content uploaded. So that was literally the beginning of it all. So yeah, and he's very stern, very grumpy, but also very generous with his time. Low key, a really nice guy. So yeah.
Do you study? You don't study PPE at Oxford, do you, as well?
No. Well, bear in mind, I'm not at Oxford. I'm just in Oxford.
In Oxford, okay.
Yeah, so it's Oxford, but you may not have heard of it. It's just called Oxford Brookes University. So it's sort of like it was the Polytechnic, and then it gained independence, I think, under Tony Blair's government. So yeah, so when I'm not at Oxford, but no, I study philosophy. So just the first P of PPE.
Okay, that's good.
Completely useless degree, may I say. Yeah.
Well, you know, tell that to Jordan Peterson. So,
yeah.
So the points-based immigration system. I've looked into it, not in massive detail, I have to admit. I'm hoping you guys have brushed up on your research. So basically, it's going to be a points-based immigration system, as we've all heard. Basically, to come to the UK, you have to get 70 points in total, at least, in order to qualify. There's 3 conditions that must be met before you're able to qualify to get these 70 points. And those are, you have to have a job offer approved from an approved sponsor, such as an employer cleared by the Home Office. This will earn 20 points. And you also have to have a job that is at a required skill level. So I think that's, you have to have like a grade equivalent. The job has to be an A-level, at least, level job. And also the ability to speak English.
Yeah.
There's also a threshold for how much money you need to earn to be able to qualify, and they've set that at 25,600, which is actually reduced from 30,000. So yeah, do you want to do a little summary, both of you, of what you think of the announcement? Shall I start with you, Zach?
Yeah, sure. I think it's kind of like a step in that direction, but I'm not necessarily it's going to decrease immigration like substantially.
Yeah,
I guess maybe due to the fact like this is only to do with like economic migrants. Essentially, it's not including asylum seekers, refugees. It's not including people that come over basically because they've got family members. It's literally just for people just to seek employment.
Yeah,
and we already have like kind of a points system for that anyway, and and this is the kind of thing Australia introduced because they want to increase immigration, not decrease it. So I think the heads might be in the right place, they might be going in the right area, but I don't necessarily think this is the right way to do it, or at least know it more needs to be done.
Well, what I'm slightly confused about, it actually says in their policy statement on the Gov website, we will reduce overall levels of migration and give top priority to those with the highest skills and the greatest talents. But you've got things like the wage threshold of you have to earn 26,000, but it was already there before at 30,000.
Yeah.
So how are the low skilled migrants coming before then if it was apparently at 30,000? You know, all these waves from places like Pakistan, Bangladesh. Is this because it was the rules were less more relaxed under Tony Blair and they've since tightened up? You know, what's actually changed?
They don't seem to be tightening up because it seems to be increasing at the moment. EU migration has gone down. Non-EU migration, which is basically like mostly non-skilled labour, that's going up. That's mostly due to like, it's not actually due to work, it's due to studying as well. That's the main driver at the moment. It's literally just this year, I've just passed work.
The student visas and things like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the main change is the migration from the EU, where we're going to have a lot less low skilled migration from the EU because they're going to have to fit these requirements now. So that's the biggest fundamental change, I guess.
The problem isn't really the EU migration, really. EU migrants tend to do like the kind of net economic benefit to the UK, whereas non-EU migrants like consistently take more out of the system than they put in. So the problem is the non-EU migrants, which is about 61% of total immigration at the moment. That's the issue. It's not EU migration.
But that's what I mean. EU migration has never been higher than non-EU migration. And if that wage threshold has been there before at 30,000, all those migrants from non-EU countries can't have been earning over 30,000. No way. So how have they come here? That's what I want to know.
Like, again, it's refugees, asylum seekers, it's people who've got family members who are here. There's very different kinds of loopholes in the system.
Yeah.
That allow people like that in. It's something that isn't being addressed with this system either. This new point-based system, it doesn't encompass any of that. If anything, it's reduced the cap on high-skilled migration.
Right.
It used to be a cap of like 20,700, and now it's just gone. And they've also reduced the number. It used to be basically a graduate kind of job. It's now reduced to a level job. So it seems to be like it's just going to make more it's just going to increase immigration, particularly in that area.
Yeah, and you're obviously against that.
Of course, aren't we all?
What do you make of it, Daniel, and what they've been saying about this?
Well, I actually heard that it's just following up from what Zach said. I heard it's going to be a lot easier for non-EU migrants to come in, and I think they're sort of missing the point. They have focused more on the EU immigration, I think, because just the way people see it, it's free movement. So, they wanted to really make a statement and say, that is definitely coming to an end. The other thing that's annoyed me is that they're refusing to talk about numbers. And whilst, anyone can pluck a number out of thin air and it might be random, you get into some rather complex economics there. But I think they are missing the point. It is about numbers, and I saw Farage say this. That it's, as Zach said, it's a step in the right direction. I agree. Points-based system is definitely something of which I approve. But ultimately, we want immigration to come down. That's why people voted for Brexit, and I think that's why people voted for a Tory government again. If they don't get that message, and I can see why he didn't want to put a number on it, because Cameron said, I want to reduce it from the hundreds of thousands to the tens of thousands. And of course, he never did that. And that got him in loads of trouble. And everyone, put a lot of, rightful scrutiny on that. So if Boris puts a number on it, he's not going to reach it. I don't think he would anyway. And then people are going to be annoyed. People won't vote for him. So, yeah, as I say, it's a good start. But I also heard there are going to be loads of exceptions to it. People who are artists and writers, and obviously that's great if you're an artist or a writer, but as Zach said as well, there are so many loopholes, and I don't know, I don't see those loopholes closing with this plan, and with the salary being reduced. It just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So I'd like to see a bit more from Boris.
Do you think they want to lower immigration?
Do I think they want to lower it?
Yes.
I don't know. I suppose that kind of gets down to the question of, do I think Boris is a genuine Leave supporter?
I think he wants to leave the EU, but I'm not. I don't think he's like credible on immigration.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, you do get a lot more of the how would you put them? More of the centrist Tories, even if they were in favour of some of them anyway. Even if they were in favour of leaving the EU, they would say the issue wasn't immigration; it was about sovereignty. And I don't know if Boris might well be one of those people. It's hard to say. He's a nebulous. He's charming, and I voted for him, but I don't know. I can't read his mind, but I think it's good that we've got Farage on the sidelines, putting the pressure on a little bit.
I don't know. I mean, after that election, like Farage just kind of like just disappeared. I think. Yeah, he's got a show on LBC, but he's not really like he's not got any like political means to put pressure on him at the moment. Not until the next election, which is what, 5 years away. Boris can literally do what he wants at the moment.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that, and I do hope that he follows through with what he, the way he presented himself. Because one thing I think that was quite remarkable about what Boris did is he almost single-handedly changed the Tory party from what was once a Remain party to a Leave party. And that's one thing that why I was so frustrated with the Tories for so long, is that there wasn't a mainstream party that represented the majority of the country. The only ones who were in favour of it were UKIP, who were seen as the closet closet racists or whatever.
You were in it, weren't you, Damien?
Are you former UKIP then, Daniel?
You know what?
What's your political history?
Well, I'll give you my voting record. I voted for Theresa May in the snap election.
Oh God. Actually, no, I did as well, so I can't say.
Yeah, well, actually, I don't think there was even a UKIP candidate in my constituency, come to think of it. But in the EU, so I mean, I'm 21, so I wasn't old enough to even vote in the referendum. I begged a friend to vote for Brexit on my behalf, actually. But he doesn't regret it. I think he thinks he made the right decision. But in the EU election, which would have been just before summer, I voted for the Brexit Party, and this time around I voted for Boris Johnson. But I certainly have. I don't. The way UKIP have gone now, I just think someone needs to come in and clean up. They don't know what they're doing.
Not even worth mentioning anymore, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah.
Who even pays attention to UKIP these days? It's just a non-entity.
Yeah. But I think that's why you got to give a lot of credit to Boris there, because he did sort of. It's not entirely down to him, but I think because he shifted the party and just said, we are the party of Brexit now. He, look, Farage didn't even get one seat. I think if Boris wasn't so adamant on getting Brexit done, if he was flip-flopping a bit more, I might not have voted for him, and I'm sure many people wouldn't have done either.
Yeah, he had a very good campaign. Like, it was pretty much on point the whole time. Just get Brexit done, just to consolidate the entire Leave vote, and it worked. So fair play to him.
Yeah.
But
he did deliver. So we are at the EU officially.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well,
I give him that. He's let me down in every other aspect, but I give him that.
I know you're quite sour at the moment, the way things have gone, other than Brexit.
I am, yes.
But going back to migration, though, he did install Priti Patel as Home Secretary, and Priti Patel is by no means a conservative. She's quite hardline, and I would say pretty right wing.
Yeah,
I think she might be my favourite person in the cabinet at the moment.
And apparently she's been really rubbing people the wrong way in the civil service. She wanted to fire one of the top civil servants, which I heard was pretty good, and people there are apparently accusing her of bullying them. So
I hope she is. I hope it's true.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. So if there isn't a path for low skilled workers who are earning low money, then all the other stuff surely is in Priti Patel's hands. And surely she's a much better bet than someone like Amber Rudd. So surely, hopefully, she will clamp down more on the low-skilled migration, the other ways of getting through other than through the points-based system.
Yeah, I think she's one of the best people to do it, but she's still got the entire civil service to work against. So she's got a bit of a mountain to climb.
Okay, but it is still possible that we can see a good reduction in low-skilled migration in general, considering the fact that nothing has really changed that much with the points-based system.
I mean, I hope that's right, but I wouldn't put a bet on it.
Yeah, but
we know what the Tories are like.
Someone like Priti Patel is not going to be soft when it comes to the definition of what a refugee is and things like that. I would like to think we're in fairly safe hands when it comes to that stuff. If what you're saying is a lot of the low-skilled immigration is coming from people claiming to be refugees and things like that, I would hope that she would clamp down on that kind of thing.
Well, it remains to be seen. So.
Okay, so you're very much like the proof is in the pudding kind of thing.
Pretty much. I'm very skeptical of the Tory government at this point. Like they made some good moves. Like Priti Patel is probably the best person to put in their position, I think. But like again, we'll see in like next year what happens to immigration.
Yeah, I guess it's quite early to tell at this point.
What do you guys think? Sorry, Damien, do you want to go?
No, carry on.
I was just going to ask you because I don't actually think I've heard either of you say much about your thoughts on like refugees and taking in any of them. What your thoughts are on that? Cameron vowed 10,000, I think it was.
Well, my philosophy on that is you should only take the ones who are actual real refugees. Obviously, they have to be escaping war or some kind of political persecution. And even then, I wouldn't take more than say 10,000 a year at most. And I would give preferential treatment to Christians in the Middle East and people like that as well. People that are more likely to integrate into our culture. And that's a theme that we talked about quite a lot.
Yeah.
Where recognizing people's culture and how well they will integrate should play a factor in immigration policy. But of course, it never does because it's too controversial at this moment in time. But I'm hoping, that as we shift more in the other direction, that will become more of a factor in the future.
Yeah. Well, I think. Sorry, Zach. Go on.
Are you supposed to claim refuge in the first safe country you enter? So what are they doing in the UK? I didn't realize there's a war in France going on. So. I mean, surely, okay, we could provide aid to some countries in like surrounding areas, I don't know, Saudi Arabia or something, so that maybe we could take people in which basically share similar cultures, similar values to the people actually fleeing war zones, whatever. The people who are actually genuinely fleeing, not economic migrants, which most of them seem to be. So that's the way to do it, rather than like accept more people into the country, because it's not like we don't accept enough people as it is anyway. It's like we're up to about 300,000 a year or something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's not sustainable.
Well, I think the other thing about the Christian refugees is that, as well as the fact that there's that question of integration, I think it's also important to bear in mind that the original definition of a refugee was, as Damien said, about being political persecution, and there's no doubt that Syrian Christians are experiencing persecution for their religion, and it's a different point to people fleeing war. Whilst I still think, I haven't really read the it's quite a long definition to what makes a refugee, but I think that's something that people miss, is that there's a specific maltreatment of Christians in Syria, which it's awful. Have either of you ever read the book? If you haven't, I'd highly recommend it. It's called The Strange Death of Europe by Douglas Murray.
Great book.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, when I read that, it just, our feeling sorry for these people, and there's a good reason to feel sorry for these people, in a sense, makes things worse, because these are criminals who are basically running the the trade of bringing people across from Northern Africa. I think the one of the islands that Douglas Murray talks about is called Lampedusa.
Lampedusa, yeah.
Where there's about 1,000 people who live there normally, and they at one point they were receiving hundreds of people every week, thousands of people every week. But it's criminal the way these people are being brought over. The people are being murdered and raped and threatened, and they're sending videos to the people who are getting on these boats, sending videos of them back to their family, of them being beaten up, saying send more money or we're going to kill this person. And us feeling sorry for these people has just sponsored that.
It's because, exactly. It's because the incentive is there that people are going to react to it. If you just remove the incentive, say, well, you're not coming in, just close the gates, then they're not going to come. It'll save lives.
Yeah. There's no doubt. And also, sorry, Damien, go on.
I was going to say the NGOs funded by people like George Soros as well are going over there, telling these people how they can gain citizenship and how they can basically go through the loopholes in the system.
Yeah. I think if you throw away your passport, it basically makes the asylum application take a lot longer. And even if you get rejected, it's cheaper to just let you stay than to send you back. So many people who even do have their asylum applications rejected stay anyway. There's no one enforcing them to leave, because it's just, countries like Italy and Greece don't have the resources to be sending that many people back. But you're right, there are NGOs and charities, so-called charities, who are giving people these loopholes to try and get them to stay. And it's mind-blowing. Really awful. I mean, the migrant trade, there's actually a lot of racism as well. This is something that I read in the book as well, is that if you are the darker you are, the lower down in the boats you have to stand, because that means you're more likely to drown if the boat sinks. I mean, it's actually sickening, and our bleeding hearts have sponsored this. I can't reinforce that point enough. It's awful.
Oh, but what do you mean? Britain's a racist country, though. We're the real problem.
Yeah.
But what do you just say David Lammy, he'll tell you.
But what do you mean? What do you mean sponsoring? Just by the virtue of offering refugee places in the first place?
Well, look, I mean, I'm not opposed to letting in any refugees, but I mean, bear in mind, on these boats, it's not just people from Syria. It's from all over places like Africa and the Middle East, where there are a lot of wars in Africa, but it's more often economic migrants. But the reason why I say sponsoring is because we've been weak on it. Europe has been weak on sort of saying, actually, your application has been rejected, you're not coming in. Or if they hadn't, they just sort of put their foot down. The fact that they haven't done that means that these criminals who are running the migrant trade, I don't know if you can call it that, but these criminals who are bringing people on boats, they have a business, and if we were strict to it, they wouldn't have a business. We'd put them out of business. So it gives them a means to be evil.
Yeah. Let me tell you something you might find objectionable.
Please.
I actually don't think reducing the threshold from 30,000 to 26,500 is that much of a bad thing. I actually think it could be a good thing, because
what a cook.
Because the only migrants I've ever really had a problem with tend to be low-skilled workers, and they tend to be either Pakistani or Muslim, or both. And that's racist, because these are people who come from a much more primitive culture than us, and a much more backward. They believe in broadly speaking, quite a backward ideology, I would say. And I would like to cut this immigration more than any other immigration, because I don't think these people integrate nearly as well as other cultures. And so I don't think you're going to have this problem with, I don't think these people, the people that are doing the grooming gangs and doing all this terrible sorts of things are going to be earning over 25,000. So
Yeah.
For me, I actually think I'm not quite so I'm not quite the same about reducing the standard from degree level qualification to A-level qualification, because A-level qualification doesn't seem that much of a high level, does it? But
I actually found a statistic earlier, and about of the high skilled labour we let in, about 56% of them are doing low to medium skilled work. So even if you let those people in, they're still going to end up doing low skilled work.
Sorry, say that again.
I found a statistic basically was like 56% of the high skilled workers we let in are doing low skilled to medium skilled employment.
Yes, but the good thing about this immigration policy actually is that it says you have to be getting a job of an A-level standard or higher.
Does it say that? I think it just says like of a reasonable standard, basically like the standard that you're supposed to be being employed in. I wasn't necessarily sure it says like it has to be an A-level equivalent, or it has to be like a D-level equivalent if you have a degree. But again, what is an A-level equivalent job?
So, okay, so this is from the Gov website. From January 2021, the job you're offered will need to be at a required skill level of RQ F3 or above, equivalent to A level. So the job you're offered needs to be at that skill level. It's not that I'm at that skill level and I'm doing low skilled work. So I guess maybe that is a good way of addressing that.
But isn't that just one point in the system, though? Like you get a point for that. There are other ways you could get, if you hit other areas, you can get higher points, and you can have to bypass that. Because I found that loopholes, like people, something like maybe you couldn't speak English and they got points everywhere else, so could be let in during the system.
No, because there's three requirements. Well, you're right. Actually, there are some exceptions. You can earn below 25,600, but only if you're in a field which is in high demand, or you've got something like a PhD, like you're exceptionally talented. So if that's according to what they say, I do actually think that will take out a lot of low skilled workers coming to this country who in general tend to be the people that benefit society the least, in my opinion. Not because they're low skilled, but for other reasons that I've addressed previously.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think the most important thing, really, for me, in my opinion, is integration. And I actually spoke to Peter Hitchens about this, because he says he doesn't believe in multiculturalism. His philosophy is integration. And I do think the debate around this is never really clarified very well, because some people, I think a lot of, in the sort of, if you're living in a very metropolitan circle, you're going to have friends from all over the world, and they probably are quite well integrated. So from that perspective, which is obviously, quite small in comparison to the rest of the country, these people aren't going to see a problem with immigration. They think that everyone is perfectly integrated, and you've got your friends from Pakistan or your friends from Saudi Arabia or from Europe or wherever, and everyone's really well integrated, and you're talking more like upper middle class at that point. But then, if you're looking at more working class areas with levels of immigration, there is far less integration. I mean, I don't know what you guys think about things like religious schooling. I mean, I'm not a Christian myself, but I do believe that if you're going to have any kind of religious schooling, the only one that should really be allowed, at least funded by the state, is Christian schooling. Because that's just the history of our country. I mean, the school I went to wasn't a Christian school, but we still had chapel service, and I thought that was great. I really liked it. I'm an atheist. I'm not a religious person by any means, but I believe that there is an importance of the preservation of that heritage. I think it's really quite important. But sure, there are state-funded Muslim schools, and they're not going to take Jews in there or Christians. You see what I mean? It's that is self-segregation.
That's quite funny that you're saying you're an atheist, and yet you would want the country to follow a non-secular policy of giving preferential treatment to Christianity.
Yeah, I mean, Well, look, I mean, I do believe in secularism. This country is, in theory, not secular, but in practice, it is. Whilst I think the opposite is true of America. Look, I mean, I don't like the idea of any school saying you have to be of a certain religion to join. That's not something I really like. But what I am saying is, you know, like my school, which was a pretty much secular school, we had chapel service, and the vicar there was a lovely guy. He taught me religious studies. You know, he wasn't trying to persuade us to believe in God or anything like that. He was just trying to encourage us to think philosophically. And along with that, you know, there are elements of heritage as well, which I just think are great. You know, even just for the sake of things like architecture and artwork and things like that, it's fascinating, even to an atheist. I love it. That's part of the reason why I study philosophy so much, studying of religion.
I guess the difference between saying like you have to like take on this religion that the state basically mandates, and rather than saying this is the cultural heritage of the country, which people should learn about and actually like not necessarily embrace, but like at least be aware of.
Yeah. Well, it's sad because actually, you know, I've got many friends who are Muslims, and their parents came from places like India and Bangladesh, and I mean they're proper patriots, you know, of Britain, and they love, some of their favorite places to visit are chapels and castles, and they're so fabulously integrated and, you know, very secular and on their part of Islam, which unfortunately we don't, you know, in certain parts of the country there's less of that. So as I say, there's an ideal which exists, but there's also a reality. You know, if you go to places like, I don't know, Bradford or whatever, people might get on the same bus as each other, but it's just very insular.
Yeah, so, I've been in a place where I've gotten a bus and I was like the only white person, the only one speaking English. I was like,
really?
Yeah. I mean, you know, so again, it's probably what I was saying. Like, I don't have a problem with people who actually like if a different, you know, ethnicity or whatever it is, but it's just people who just have to. You just have to have that shared cultural heritage. Really, you have to have, you know, be willing to integrate and be part of a society. We can't just have like, you know, different, you know, have fragmentations of, you know, different, you know, religions, different societies.
How do you address that in policy other than, you know, through migration?
Just round them up, put them in camps.
Oh my god! I think I've come to the wrong place. Yeah, no,
it is a difficult one because, say for instance, we talked about religious schooling. I don't like the idea of there being Muslim schools whatsoever. I'm just going to say that bluntly. But at the same time, I do want there to be C of E schools, because I think they do a good job, and they've done a good job for hundreds of years. But I don't like the idea of one religion, especially a religion like Islam, dominating a schooling system. I think it's just a recipe for disaster. So I don't really know how you square that circle. Maybe it is what you said, where, you know, state school funding should only go to Christian schools, even though that's not a very secular policy. But
I mean,
you know,
I suppose it just depends on what the requirements for joining the school would be. I mean, as I said, I don't like the idea of any school, state or private, saying you have to be of a certain religion to join. But I think there's a difference between that and saying, you know, we take anyone, like my school did, but we also happen to have chapel service and a priest here. And you know, that I think that I fully support. I think that's great. But yes, I mean, it's just, I think the thing is, because of the way we look at somewhere like America, where you know, you had enforced segregation ethnically. It's mind-blowingly awful, the thought of that. And because of the way we perceive that, I don't think it ever came across our minds to think that people would self-segregate. You know, people, we just assumed that everyone would want to integrate together, and that's a huge mistake. But it's a very important question. How do you enforce it? Well, just to go back to what Peter Hitchens said, he said it's a lost battle. I'm a little less cynical than that. I would like to think that things like religious schooling is a good start. I mean, you know, and because if you are going to a Muslim school, how many friends are you going to have that are non-Muslim? It's just not. It creates homogenous echo chambers. That,
I think the solution is to reduce immigration, because you get, when a high level of integration, you don't get as much integration. I think that's what's got to be championed at the moment. It has to be say, okay, we've got to reduce the numbers. We have to start, because people do over time, like we've got second generation migrants now, they start to become more integrated in society. But it does happen over time. It just can't happen when you keep having this massive immigration. People like basically have, you know, creating like ghettos with people like, you know, completely different culture and completely different judicial system, essentially.
Yeah.
I think what's going to happen, like I said, what's got to happen, we've got to reduce levels first, and then we've got to start focusing on integration. We do that through, you know, champion British values, you know, which is more simple work and people want to embrace.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is the problem though, isn't it? Is that I do agree that second generation immigrants are, you know, in many cases very well integrated. I was just saying, you know, I've got many friends who have a background from all over the place, and they're just, you know, completely in agreement with just the fundamental principles like democracy. I mean, democracy is a good start, but even, you know, further free expression,
free speech, obviously,
secularism. Yeah, I mean, for me, that's the big one, free expression. I'm actually writing my dissertation about that. Not that it's, I suppose it is a little bit philosophical, but I'm sort of gotten bored of things like metaphysics and wishing I'd done philosophy and politics probably. But yeah, you know, it's, you need people to have the same base level of values, just things like, you know, it doesn't have to be the same religion or anything like that, but obviously, you know, we're very heterogeneous in our society, and I think that's great, but at the same time we need to have the understanding of things like the rule of law, secularism, free speech, democracy. And actually, I think what one would like to see is also just people not hating this country. You know, you see that a lot. People think because we had an empire, surprise, surprise, we're evil, and I mean, I don't even know what the implications of that should be, but people love to go on about it, and, you know, as if we're the only country to have ever had an empire, for God's sake.
We had the best empire in history. I mean, come on. Credit where credit's due. Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, the way I see it is, you know, obviously bad things happened in the British Empire, awful things happened, but at the same time, that was the norm of humanity at that point. Everyone wanted an empire. Look at the Ottoman Empire. I mean, it was huge and one of the longest standing empires of all time. But, you know, you're not seeing much reparations from the Turks.
I mean, the British Empire did a hell of a lot of good as well. I mean, who pick one empire in history you'd rather live under? You know, you're going to pick the British Empire.
Well, and also,
you know,
the unprecedented.
These people, I was going to say, these people like Gandhi and Nelson Mandela wouldn't have stood a chance against, you know, a lot more of a fierce empire than us. The only reason why those people were able to gain any ground was because we were a civilized empire. Otherwise, we would have just chopped Gandhi's head off.
Well, I think the best thing that we did, and it was unprecedented for human history. Well, I mean, for the most part, unprecedented. I couldn't think of any other example. Was that we ultimately decided, we had the moral foresight and said, you know, we should be giving these countries independence, and that's what we did. How many other empires?
Partly to win World War II.
Well, we had to because it became unsustainable to keep the empire. Because empires it cost a lot of money. It's a net loss. I mean, sure, you know, there are benefits, you know, territory and military strategy and that kind of thing. But to maintain an empire costs a hell of a lot of money. And after World War II, we were massively in debt. We just got rid of our assets because, you know, that's what you do. They're too expensive to maintain.
Yeah, for sure.
We just got a comment here from someone called Jim Bob Daz, who said, 10 years ago, I was completely against religious schools and religion in general. I just put my oldest in a C of E school. So there you go.
I actually don't know what the situation is. I mean, do you get many Christian schools that say you have to be Christian to join?
No, not at all. There's no C of E school in the country which says you have to be Christian.
Well, then I think that's completely fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely fine. As I've
And
no
to be
problem with
fair, I don't think Muslim schools probably say that either, but you're not going to get non-Muslim kids going to Muslim schools, are you? Because it's so non-secular. It's so like, you know, at least with C of E, it's not like they ram Christianity down your throat, because they don't.
Yeah, it's true. It's
So
I think the way I see the issue with Islam is it's quite simple for me, really. It's just, you know, whenever you hear about the debate on Islam and terrorism, war on terror, I don't think it's a war on terror. I think it's a war on theocratic fascism. But the war on terror, I guess, got people's emotions going. So sure, it's good for PR. It's always the debate: is it about Islam or is it about politics? And you know, it's a very lefty thing to say. Oh no, this is nothing to do with the religion of peace. It's about politics, and it's about Israel, or it's about the Iraq war. And you know, for me, it's just very simple. Islam does not have a distinction between religion and politics. It's all the same thing.
Yes.
There was no First Amendment in Islam, like we sort of all at least claim to aspire to in the West, certainly in the Anglosphere. So to distinguish a political issue and a religious issue, especially when you're talking about extremists in Islam, is absurd, because it's the same thing. They will talk about politics and they will talk about some twisted form of spirituality, but it's all under the umbrella of Islam. So for me, Islam needs to basically look at itself and say, we need to establish a distinction between spirituality and politics has to be secular. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, but that ain't going to happen. So let's just cut immigration at this point, I'd say.
Well, fair enough. You're a cynic. I think there's good reason to be one.
I mean, it's a nice thought of reformation of Islam, but I really don't see it happening.
Yeah.
Not anytime soon, anyway.
Yeah, you know, they've got another 500-600 years behind Christianity. So
Christianity, yeah.
Who knows? We'll have to see.
Well, this has been almost slightly disappointing, I have to say, because it doesn't seem like we can really say anything solid about this whole immigration points-based system, other than that they've reduced the threshold for grades and salary, because ultimately the immigration that we really care about, the low-skilled immigration, particularly from places which have cultures which are very different and sometimes opposing to us. This is all going to be sort of decided by Priti Patel outside of the points-based system, and we don't really know what she's going to do at this point. So
it's early days.
I don't have anything to add to that, other than that I guess we're just going to have to come back to the same debate in, you know, a year's time and just see what the figures are. There's a really good organization called Migration Watch. I'm sure you'll all follow them.
Yeah.
So they particularly pay a close eye on this issue, and so if anyone's going to call them out, it'll be them for sure.
It's one of those things where I think from their perspective, they're saying what they think people want to hear. But as you say, it just remains to be seen. I'd like to hear a bit more about integration. I think that's my main concern.
Integration. It seems like a bit of right-wing virtue signaling. It's more like, okay, we're going to give you what you want, we're going to reduce immigration, but like, not really. Just going to tinker with it, tinker the system a little bit.
Yeah.
In fact,
we're not going to address the big issues. We're just going to say, you know, we're going to adjust some thresholds a bit and say, oh, we're cutting down. It's what Tories do.
I've just mentioned Migration Watch there. It totally didn't play into my mind to see what they had to say about this, but I've just come up with their website now, and they've actually released a press release on this. So I'll just read this for you quickly.
On the Australian point system.
About the new immigration system.
Yeah, I've just been reading it. It's pretty good.
Oh, have you? Oh, okay. So, okay, so it says here, this is Dr. Ben Greening. He's the executive director. Ending unskilled immigration would be a real victory for the British public and the British economy. However, these proposals suggest that the government is not serious about taking control of immigration. Not only will millions of UK workers see their jobs opened up to new or greater competition from overseas workers from much poorer countries, but employers will no longer have to look to find anyone at home before searching abroad. The main safeguard of a suitable pay threshold will be significantly lowered, with an added loophole that so-called new entrants who might be workers with a decade of experience could be paid little more than the UK minimum wage. And the last bit it says here, with no cap on numbers coming via the main route from the outset, this is a massive risk that will alarm the 30 million people who want the government to reduce immigration and show belief in young Brits rather than giving in to the demands of bosses. Okay, well, that's a lot more scathing than I thought it would be, to be honest.
I think the key is
I rest my case.
Yeah, I do think a lot of that is they've really avoided the numbers thing because they just don't want the scrutiny. If you say a number, it's more of a promise than anything else, and then people can say, oh well, you were 10,000, 20,000 over what you said, and in a sense, politically, it was quite smart of them not to, but in terms of what people want, they're certainly not adhering to it. So
yeah. I mean, the way they sort of talked about this in their PR and everything, the points-based immigration system, a lot of people are going to be hearing this and think, oh, this is great, we're going to have like a proper system now. A lot of people aren't going to really see what we're talking about now, where things actually haven't changed that much, I guess. So it's a bit of a sneaky one, really. Unless, like I said, Priti Patel does clamp down on the other side of it, which you will hope she will. But it's,
the thing is, what bothers me is Conservatives now have they're in power now. They've got a massive majority. They can do whatever they want, and they're doing they could be doing like massive radical change like Tony Blair did when he got in, but instead they're just doing like the tinkering little things. They're virtually thinking about climate. They're just now is the chance to do something, and they're not.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on climate change?
Sorry?
I mean, this is probably for another discussion, but what are your thoughts on climate change?
Well, I think you can't deny that the planet is warming up. I mean, it's increased by what, about a degree since the Industrial Revolution? But I think so. How much mankind has contributed to that, I think, is a bit up in the air. And I mean, I don't know. When it comes to what's going to take to try and become carbon neutral, try and reduce the impact humans are having, I think that the costs of doing it far outweigh the supposed benefits anyway. It's like Boris is pledging the continue Theresa May's pledge to become carbon neutral by 2050. We spend about 1 trillion, which is like half our GDP, on trying to do it, which is just when we're already in debt to already about 85.9% GDP in debt. Yeah. It's just like, what are you doing?
I think it's one of those things. I do believe that there is a problem. I think certainly, I'm a conservative. I do believe that we do need to look after this planet. I think that we are, we can. There is a sense of hubris. We haven't taken care of the planet very well, but at the same time, as you say, we have to be careful with the way we do that, because it's about the market, and you have to be very careful, and also it's about debt. I think this is what annoys me the most about people my age is just, I remember seeing all these posts on Facebook around the time of the election, and they would just have a picture of Corbyn, picture of Boris, and then just a list of policies, and it would be Corbyn voted in favour of this and Boris voted against this, and every single one was just spending money. And I just thought,
more spending, exactly.
Yeah, you can't say, oh, he's a good person because he wants to spend more money. We don't have any money. The national debt is in the trillions. I mean, for God's sake. And you just say, oh, well, he wanted to spend our money that we don't have. He must be a great guy. I mean,
right now, private debt and public debt are both, as a percentage and as an absolute total, higher than they were in 2008 before the financial crisis. And still Corbyn's like, we need to spend more. It's like, first of all, what the Tories doing? It seems to be just like, oh, we're going on a spending spree now. Fuck balanced budgets, like that budget surplus. Forget that happened. We didn't promise that.
It's because of the connotations of austerity, and the word austerity has come to. It's as if people wanted to make a life misery for everyone. It had nothing to do with the fact that, as we said, the world nearly ended in 2008. I mean, we nearly had a situation where we couldn't pull money out of the cash point. We didn't the austerity wasn't imposed to piss people off. It was, kind of necessary in some ways, at least.
Also, what austerity do we have? We haven't. You only reduced the deficit maybe in the last year. We were still spending way more than we're taking in.
Yeah. Of course we are.
And since Boris got it, seems to be okay. Well, let the floodgates are open now. Let's spend even more.
Well, we know with the NHS, we never actually cut spending.
No, we never cut the spending. Spending went up consistently every single year, and it's still like, they've cut the NHS. Like what?
Yeah, no, I think it's because the way the NHS works is they do 3% on top every year or 2%, and they went from doing 3% to 1% or 1.5% or something. They just increased it, but increased it less than expected, and that's
sure. But evil. Every single year it takes up more and more of our budget, which I think is why immigration has to be as high as it is, because immigration, alleviates the tax debt because population numbers are falling. So the government cannot rely on tax receipts like in the future. That's why they can import more migrants.
In the last 10 years of our Conservative government we've had, I think they have cut a decent amount, because they cut a lot of funding to councils and things like that. But it does seem like we're going in the opposite direction now under Boris, where he's just said he's going to do HS2, which is unbelievably unpopular. But he's very much a big believer in big infrastructure, Boris. So I can see why he's gone for HS2.
Not believe in fiscal responsibility either.
No. I guess he thinks if we are going to put more money into anything, I'm glad it's infrastructure, because at least that you do get some economic benefit.
I think he likes infrastructure because people remember you when you invest in infrastructure.
Yeah, and you don't see the cost. The costs are hidden. The opportunity cost of where money could have gone. If people had to keep that money, or it wasn't borrowed. For subsequent generations, we'd have more goods and services. We'd have things we'd built in other areas. But whereas with their budget, point to it and say, "Oh, look at this! It didn't exist before," and now it does. Yeah. So clearly, it's the government that have done this. Yeah, and it's been a net positive, because you can't measure the costs.
Yeah, but I think the Conservative government has done. I just want to give some more praise to the Conservatives, because I think we've been bashing them a bit too much this past hour.
They deserve
it. Because I think they have done some good positive things, such as slashing business rates, especially to do with things on the high street. And I'm not sure.
Didn't they put that on hold though? I'm sure they're going to cut corporation tax further, and then Boris decided against it.
But they have been reducing some taxes for business, which I think can only be a good thing. But the other side of that, they should have cut spending at the same time.
I read something today that the tax would have to increase to do with all, to fund extra spending, which is promised. So taxes may still increase. So,
but then we did get the mansion tax at the same time. So
exactly. It's like Labour in the election. Like seriously,
I wouldn't quite go that far.
I don't know. We're going to spend
not
all this extra money. We're going to fund it by a mansion tax. We're going to off-come relegate the internet. We're going to get the communist Chinese to build 5G network. Take your pick. I mean, you'd think Corbyn got in.
Well,
do you know anything about Rishi Sunak, Zach?
I know he's the new Chancellor.
The new Chancellor, yeah. But do you have an opinion on him, or do you not really know anything about him?
It seems to be put in place to be basically Boris's yes man, essentially. Because what I've read is Sajid Javid was kind of a bit more tight on the purse strings, and Boris was like, "Nah, I'm not having this." So I want to fire his advisors, and basically that's eventually got rid of him.
Yeah.
So now obviously. Yes, now he's been put in place, and it seems to be number 10 to put. They're going to share all the special advisors, so it's basically number 10 in control of the Treasury as well.
Yeah, it's quite smart, really, because I mean, it's now he's going to have. I think it's very much like a Dominic Cummings trick what he's doing there.
Well, it's politically smart, economically maybe not.
Yes. So I'm talking very much politically. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But when it comes to political parties in general, a lot of people would say to me, you know, now that we've had this discussion, well, look at the Conservatives and what they're doing, and you know how this is terrible. You should leave the Tories, or you should like support another party. For me, I'm still very much firmly in the Conservative Party, and I still very much believe, even if we don't get everything that we want, it's almost like a duty now to make the Conservative Party into what we want it to be. Because I do think the only way we're going to achieve real change is to do it through the Conservative Party, like Trump did with the Republican Party.
Thing is, though, now that Boris has got a massive majority, like, I don't see how you change that now. He's basically in power on what he says goes. So I'm not sure how much influence we could have now. Like, whereas Farage, like when there wasn't necessarily a majority, Farage had a lot more influence because he was basically like could sway the Conservatives, further to the right. Whereas now there's no force to do that.
I'm talking more about the future generation and where the next Conservative leader might come from. I think the best way we're going to get to what we like more, which is, lower taxes, lower regulation, lower immigration, is by filling the ranks of the Conservatives and eventually getting someone in who represents us more. Boris is a step in the right direction, I would say. I think we just need to carry on building on that. And so, despite what we're talking about, things.
Oh, I think we lost you a little bit.
The connection's gone a bit, man.
Did my connection go there?
Can you hear him, Zach?
Yeah, a little bit. Kind of a bit of robot voice.
Now. Yeah, you're back now.
How much of that did you hear?
What was the last thing I heard? I can't remember now.
Anyway, all I'm saying is, despite the things which we've been talking about today, I don't think this is a reason to abandon the Conservative Party at this point, because I still very much believe how we're going to achieve change is still through them. And Boris is at least a step in the right direction, especially with Brexit. What do you feel about that? Either of you?
Yeah, I do kind of agree for now. I think for now, it is still probably better being Conservative Party. But I think it remains to be seen what they're actually going to do. Because, like I said, I've been disappointed since the election, really.
Yeah. If
it keeps going this way, then I might have to look at their options. But we've got 5 years to the next election, so.
But can I ask, Zach? I'm pretty sure you were a Conservative member during Theresa May. So
yeah, I've been a Tory member for about, I don't know how many years now, about 3 or 4 years, something like that. 3 years, I think.
So why is it now that you're contemplating your future with the Conservative Party and not back then?
I left Theresa May after the Chequers deal. I was like, nah, not for this. And then Boris came back. I was like, right, okay, I'll rejoin again.
Yeah,
I care about principle, not about parties.
So what is it going to take for the Conservative Party to betray your trust, for you to leave fully?
I don't know. I get it. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I think that's all I can say. I just don't like the direction he's going at that moment. But he could turn around and say, okay, right, we are going to reduce. We're going to cut non-EU migrants. So we're going to reduce non-skilled migrants and actually address the proper issues in the migration system. That'd be a step in the right direction. Could say, okay, we're going to we're slashing regulations and taxes on businesses, slashing taxes, doing something about the national debt. I can't see it happening at this point, but it would be nice.
Well, one thing that gives me hope also is that Priti Patel is now in a prime position to be Prime Minister after Boris Johnson. And
how good would that be?
I hope she would be, exactly like Priti Patel is, based and red pilled.
If it went to membership, I think she'd probably win it.
Yeah, And the thing is, she would have that broad appeal as well because, you know, she ticks the bloody diversity boxes. So people would give her less of a hard time.
I actually did hear a lot of people grilling her. I think even Nick Ferrari did it. He was grilling her. I do like Nick Ferrari, but he was grilling her on whether her parents would have been allowed into the country under these new rules. And you know, one can see the temptation to ask that question, but I think you also have to bear in mind that there's a very different context now than there was back at the time when Priti Patel's parents would have been entering this country. That would have been, I don't know how long ago, decades ago, you know.
But I could actually answer that because her parents are Ugandan Asians and they were getting persecuted by Idi Amin at the time. And so she would have qualified as an actual refugee, unlike a lot of the other so-called refugees that have made it over here.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't say that, actually.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't either. It's a good card to pull.
I think it's an emotional argument. We're not debating about logic anymore. It's just about, oh, you know, we've got to save everyone. Like, we can't. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just talk about facts, not like, oh, well, you know, your parents might not be able to come over. Like, who cares? It's hypothetical.
Yeah, and it's just it's a different situation. You know, I had ancestors that came here from Poland who probably had no money, but you know, it's just a different situation. It's so different. You know, we've been having hundreds of thousands of people coming here for quite a while now, and you know, can't compare that to 50, 60, 100 years ago.
If anyone was
migration now is about what it used to be. I'm not sure how many years of immigration it was. I think the whole Windrush generation, it's like the whole Windrush generation, that whole period of like migration that came over, it was like 1 year's worth of migration in the UK.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now it's like ridiculous at the moment.
And the Windrush generation.
Immigration for the past 5 years or so has been running at 500,000 in total.
Yeah, really.
And that's a quarter of a million if you do the net figure.
Which I was going to say that sounds like a gross figure, so the net figure would be more like 250, 300, something like that.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I've got some comments here. If you want to send any questions, we're not going to go on too much longer, so send them in now. Someone said here, austerity was always about balancing the books, but they didn't do it short and sharp enough. They did it too lightly.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I wanted to fire that question back at you, Daniel, about the Conservative Party. You know, what would it take for you to? Are you a member of the Conservative Party?
I am. Only about 6 months ago, I became a member.
6 months ago. Okay, so where does your loyalty lie, and how much would they have to cross the line for you to reconsider your membership?
Well, look, I mean, as I said, in the EU election, I voted for the Brexit Party. On that, you know, there was no dispute about it, and I think because it was the EU election, it was just a different situation. For me, there's not really an alternative at the moment. I don't know who else I could vote for. You know, there are many things that frustrate me about the Tories. None of them talk about freedom of expression. I think that's one of the most important things, in my opinion. I don't hear any politician talk. Well, no MPs really talk about it that often. You certainly hear some sort of public figures and commentators do, but you know, I'd really like to hear someone speak more about that. I mean, you know, the things like regulation of what people say online. I'd like to hear a bit more clarity on that, because you know, that comes down to things like harassment, and harassment is quite a vague term. You know, I could say that I've been harassed in this conversation, and how would you guys prove me wrong? You know, it's all about the way I feel about it, you know, and that would be nonsense. But it's a tough one. What would they have to do for me to leave? You know, I mean, it's interesting, even under David Cameron, I still, whilst obviously I didn't agree with the EU stuff, I felt myself, I think in my constituency, there was just never someone standing in for UKIP or Brexit Party. So I couldn't have voted for them. It would have, and actually my constituency has always been Labour. So if I don't vote Conservative in my constituency, it's just helping Labour. It's been Labour for 20 odd years, I think. So
yeah,
it's tough. I think in the current situation, I can't see myself leaving the Conservatives, but you know, I don't know. I never really saw myself as that conservative until I got involved in politics, and I just saw the hysterical culture in which we live, especially online. And I just thought, well, I'm certainly not any of that. So I guess I align more with the conservatives. But I never saw myself things like, I don't know, gay marriage or whatever. I don't have any. I see why, because there's a complication in British law about, how we have we don't have exactly the separation of church and state. Someone who was against gay marriage, I don't think is necessary. They're not. Everyone would just say that's homophobic. It's not necessarily homophobic. It's just about how you define marriage and things like that. But on those sorts of issues, I'm generally quite liberal. And I mean liberal in the classical sense, not in the current sense. But yeah, as I say, I just sort of see the people, kind of identitarian, political. I mean, the sort of Bernie Sanders types, Jeremy Corbyn's. I think, okay, I'm definitely not with them. So I guess I got to be with the conservatives. That's the way I see it.
Well, I think most liberals these days are forced to define themselves as conservatives, because in this crazy culture, you are technically conservatives because you're going against the grain, and the grain at the moment is clamping down on speech and spending lots of money.
But it's Boris to come down on speech as well. Let's be honest.
Well, I don't think he's added to that problem too much, although he did put the internet under Ofcom, which
are basically like now forcing UK companies to increase the terms and the guidelines, and then if you get violated, then they're actually liable, so they have to take action.
But for the moment, they're just giving guidance on frameworks of how these social media platforms should regulate. They're not actually regulating properly. So I think some of that is overblown when people talk about that. I don't know if you've heard about that, Daniel, the Ofcom being.
Yeah, I read an article about it the other day, but it didn't. As you say, it didn't seem to be too much of a problem the way I was seeing. I mean, the trouble is, these social media sites, whether it's YouTube or whatever, a part of me does want to say they are independent companies who can do what they want as long as they're clear about it and they have official rules and they apply them evenly. Then I don't really have a problem with it. If they want to say, I don't know, you have to be on board with transgenderism as a concept. Well, whether you agree with that or not, I think that that as a private company, they should be allowed to do that. But then I suppose the question is, they are kind of monopolies now. So I don't know. It's funny. I was speaking to an American friend, and in the past, I've almost been tempted to say that I would want to lend sovereignty to the Americans just on the First Amendment, which is ironic, being someone who supports Brexit. But they have a better relationship with free expression over there than we do. They don't. The Supreme Court just laughs at the term hate speech. Hey, what the hell is? What is hate speech? Are you encouraging violence actively and directly, or are you not? That's really the line for me.
True, but then Silicon Valley are incredibly censorious.
Yeah,
no, they are. Of course they are. I mean, but I guess that's the question. I don't know where you guys stand on that. I've heard people talk about creating some sort of online constitution, but then I guess maybe we just need more social media platforms that are willing to compete with the big guys, and they really do pride themselves on free speech.
Problem you got now is like you've got government like trying to get involved and trying to regulate companies. I think that's why a few alternatives went down. I think Gab and Mines, things like that. I'm not sure. I think like one of them basically like they had to just like essentially cease because they couldn't keep up with all that extra regulation imposed on by governments. Basically lobbied for by big social media companies saying we need to be regulated and harmful speech online and all that. So the solution is to stop regulating to actually allow people to compete. And then obviously the market can decide where it needs to go, where they want to be,
Yeah, but how do you stop a private company from regulating themselves?
Sorry?
How do you stop a private company from regulating their own users?
Fine. But But users are free to choose which platform they use.
Yeah, but the problem is
It's not forced on
you know,
anyone.
the problem is companies like Facebook are too huge now. No alternative is ever really going to take over. I can't imagine.
Mm.
I'm not
That
sure
is a
that's
tough
true.
one.
I mean, throughout history, you've had like thousands of like huge companies that thought, oh, they'd be on forever, they'd never fail. And you know, few decades later, then you know, nowhere to be seen.
So you wouldn't be in favour of an online bill of rights?
No, I don't see why the government should be getting involved in it. The internet was fine before government involvement.
Okay, well, that's an interesting topic to end on, actually, because you're very much like as little government as possible, aren't you, Zach?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, the market solves everything. No, I'm kidding.
Correct.
Where do you stand on that kind of issue, Daniel? Does the market solve everything?
Wow. Does it solve everything?
Do you think that the solution to most things is to have less government in general?
You know, look, there's a balance to it. I think I'm a believer in some form of social democracy. I think the NHS is a good thing, although poorly. Oh no, I've got someone disagreeing over here. No, you know, I think people are far too sort of obsessive about it and protective, and they don't realise how it really does bleed us dry. How poorly it's managed, and all. You know, lots of reforms are needed for it, but I do believe that it should exist. You know, things like state pensions as well. I think there is certainly a place for that sort of thing. But on that issue of online bill of rights, it's very tough. I think it's one of those things where we're going to have to just give it some time, because if these companies do remain as monopolies, and they will become the modern day sort of public square, speaker's corner kind of thing, if you like, then maybe we do need an online bill of rights. But you know, at the same time, government have intervened before with some of these social media companies, and it has made things worse. You know, all this stuff about trying to crack down on fake news, and you know, I saw someone post a meme the other day that was a joke, and then I got a thing covering it saying, "Oh, it's false information," but it was obviously false information. It was a joke, you know, and they just don't really know what they're doing with this stuff. So
like if you give the government the power to regulate the internet, you're going to get someone like Jeremy Corbyn and Bernie Sanders come along, who's going to amend legislation, so you know the internet has to abide by these rules, which I will set.
Yeah.
Surely we need a place like what 10, 15 years ago, the internet didn't have anything like that. It was just people who could just freely express what they want to, and it was great.
Yeah.
See, this is why America is the luckiest country in the world, where they have a written constitution and a list of amendments that can't be changed, essentially, or you know, it's very difficult to change them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if the constitution is written now, that'll be a lot different.
Yeah, but the thing is,
honest.
It's kind of funny to think about, because back then they had, you know, some absolute great minds like Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson and people like that. Absolutely. You just would not want anyone writing the Constitution these days whatsoever.
Yeah,
this is the thing. Imagine David Cameron writing the Constitution.
Exactly, that's my point. Like, can you imagine that?
Yeah. No, I was saying this to a lecturer. He was laughing because I think he was Canadian. He was saying it's absurd how you guys just don't have a written constitution, and Brexit has kind of exposed that. And there's some truth to it. I think some people say they like it because it allows, you know, flexibility. But I said to him, "Who on earth is going to write our constitution? I'd love a First Amendment of some sort, but who the hell is going to write it? I don't know. No one I can think of."
Let me throw something deep and philosophical into the mix, actually.
Please.
Since you are a philosophy student yourself.
Yeah.
I remember I was in Athens. I was going around Europe a little bit, and I met an American guy at this hostel. And I started talking to him about politics in general, and how there's a lot of unhappiness in Europe and Britain about, you know, immigration and things like that, and no sort of recognition of our culture as being important. And I remember he said that a country sort of has to have its own sort of national myth, that people sort of like a story that runs in the fabric of the country. And for America, that's very obvious with the American War of Independence, and the Constitution and yeah, everything like that. And he sort of asked the question, what's Britain's sort of myth or story in a sense? And I said to him, I guess the closest thing we have to that is World War II and Winston Churchill and that kind of thing. And he said that's in the last less than 100 years. It's so crazy that is kind of your national myth, but it kind of is, because most people who grow up don't know a thing about Magna Carta and things like that. We don't have any real education when it comes to these kind of things, whilst in America it's a lot more solid when you learn about the Constitution and the separation of government and all this kind of thing. Do you think maybe we don't have a clear enough national myth, Daniel?
Yeah, I think the point you made about World War II is so true. I think that's our finest hour, if you like. It would be nice if the Magna Carta played a larger role. No one knows what the Magna Carta is. In fact, the Magna Carta played a role in the inspiration of the American Constitution. It was a huge step in human progress. So I think that would be nice. But, Britain has a weird history of division, which I don't actually think is necessarily a bad thing. Whether it's the Civil War, Normans and Saxons, there is that story. But even then, how many people our age really even know or care about that sort of thing? But he might well be.
Did you go to a fairly well-to-do school at all, or was it pretty bog standard state school?
I was lucky enough to be privately educated, so I was with all the liberal elite, if you like.
Okay. How was your education when it came to British history and things like that?
Well, it's interesting actually, because I did learn about the Magna Carta, but I was very young. I sort of had to re-educate myself on that. Actually, just back on, I don't want to go too much down this route, because we already spoke about the empire. And I always hear people saying, we never like to admit, and we never teach our kids how evil we once were. And I don't know about other schools, because there are obviously many different curriculums, but I did learn about the slave trade and how obviously we were more sort of facilitating rather than owning that many slaves.
We did abolish it though.
Well, exactly. And actually, the other interesting thing is, once the British population started to learn more and more about how the role that we played regarding slavery, it was very, very unpopular. People were disgusted by it in a way that wasn't the same in America. So I did learn about that, and I do know about the way that the slave trade works. So
did you learn anything positive about the British Empire at school?
I mean, I didn't really learn. It's hard to say, really. I wasn't taught.
So even in private education, we're not getting taught these sort of fundamentals of British history, essentially, are we? Never mind state schools.
Yeah, I mean, look, I suppose as I said, there was a bit of Magna Carta. I was very young. I feel like at the time I didn't really understand what I was learning about. I think when I was quite young, I did get quite a good understanding of British history. Lots on the Tudors, the Reformation. Did a lot on the Reformation, actually. So I think that actually, there's a good story. The Reformation, obviously, it was not just Britain; it was across Europe with Luther and everything. But I think there's a good story there. I never really got the side of education that was bias, and whether you would, I was never taught to believe that Britain should be ashamed nor particularly proud. There was definitely an essence around World War II that what we did was good, and I think that's just obviously not in dispute. But yeah, I think there's definitely an interesting point. I mean, Greece. Look at Athens. I mean, Athens is right in the center of Athens. You have a reminder of civilization and in its beginning. Where you could go and watch the plays of Aristophanes and Socrates would intervene and annoy everyone before he was forced to drink hemlock. I mean, that's just amazing. But we do have our stories too, like the Magna Carta, like Tudors and the Reformation.
English Bill of Rights.
The Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution.
The Enlightenment is huge as well.
Massive steps forward in the human evolution.
Yeah. I think the Enlightenment for sure. I actually only really began learning about the Enlightenment at university because it's obviously quite relevant to philosophy. So I think that's something they could probably put more in the curriculum for sure.
It's a crime. We leave school and do who John Locke is. It's just like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
One thing I actually quite like about the sort of new young right generation, the people who listen to Nick Fuentes and this kind of thing, is they do very much know their stuff when it comes to the history of the country, whether it be America or Britain, and Christianity. So I think if more young people pay more of an interest, and if it does carry on going in that direction with more young people, then hopefully that can only be a good thing, right?
Yeah. Well, education is everything. And, only then can you really have an informed opinion. Although having said that, look at the state of universities today. You get people who are so intelligent, they're communists. Yeah. But yeah, you're definitely right.
Well, I think we might wrap this stream up, but it's been an interesting discussion. And I hope to have you on again, Daniel, at some point.
Oh, I'd absolutely love to. Thank you so much for having me. And let's do another one soon. Follow Ad Hominem, guys, if you're watching.
Follow Ad Hominem, yeah. Have you got any new guests lined up for your next episode?
It's tough because I've literally got about 50 subscribers. I'm very, very small. I don't know if you know the comedian who I believe was born in the Soviet Union. His name is Konstantin Kisin.
No,
maybe not. He got involved in I met him, is why I bring him up, and I'm trying to persuade him to come on my podcast to talk about free speech. He got involved in a controversy where he did a comedic performance. A bunch of students said, "Oh, can you come to our university and do a show?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And they gave him a contract to sign where he said you can't be transphobic, homophobic, misogynist, sexist, and this whole list of things that he couldn't say or refer to. And then at the end, it also said, "We'd also like you to be respectful of everyone there." And he just
that's the first year of comedy censorship.
It's absurd, but he said to me he's very busy, so we'll see how it goes. I'm working on it. As I said, lucky enough to be in Oxford, so you've got lots of great thinkers walking around. I might try and have Peter Hitchens on again. You feel
you got to top Peter Hitchens.
Sorry,
you got to try and top Peter Hitchens.
Try and what?
Yeah.
Sorry,
you got to try and top Peter Hitchens.
Top? Oh well, it's I've set the bar quite high, really.
Can you tell Peter Hitchens to come on Purple Tories as well, please? Because
sure. I think he'd probably like you guys because he hates the Tory party. Hates them. I mean, more than you guys for sure.
I think we get quite well.
Yeah. Well, I was saying to him when I interviewed him, I said, you're not at least. Is there nothing promising about Boris? And, he's a bit. I said there's a comparison to Disraeli, and he said so. I said, well, isn't that good? And he said, the Conservative Party was never conservative. I was like, okay, well, you know what? I can't argue with you on that. You're going to just, more than me.
I mean, he's so often right, though.
He is. He's a very smart guy. I was also a huge fan of his brothers as well. I sort of find myself, somewhere between the two of them.
Have you read any of Peter Hitchens' books?
I've read the Abolition of Liberty.
There's that one. What the other one was? Brief History of Crime, I think. I don't know. It might be the same one. It might be renamed. I don't know. But yeah, both of them great. I got my audiobooks. It's all in his voice as well. It's fantastic.
Oh, does he do the audiobook?
Yeah, he just all of audio. He blast through them all.
Just a cynical tone throughout the whole book, I imagine.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Honestly, check it out.
He wants to create one final book, which will probably be about this thick. And it's just thick and black, and in white writing it just says The Obituaries of Britain by Peter Hitchens. He believes we're doomed, and he thinks all young people should leave the country before it's too late.
I so buy that.
Yeah. Well, in fact, that was one of my favourite moments when he said that on Question Time. He said, "I encourage every young person to leave the country."
Yeah.
The next chapter of Britain will be written in Chinese.
It's basically like abandon all hope. It's lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. This has been a very positive episode. So
yeah, for sure.
have a good day, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers, guys.
See you later.
See you later.